All right, time for my second installment of 10 random death metal CDs in my collection. Only rule is that they're at least kind of good. And we're going to start with a classic one, Wolverine Blues by Entombed. For many years, I kind of avoided this album. I liked everything up until this, and I dropped off on this one. But I really liked To Rise, Shoot Straight, and Speak the Truth. But I always told myself that this album was transitional, not as heavy as the old stuff and not as rockin' as the new stuff. But I finally bought a copy several years ago, and I gotta give this a 9 out of 10. I was sleeping on it. As I mentioned when I began my last video, talking about Napalm Death, this is another one of the Earache and Columbia split releases, which also involved Godflesh, Carcass, maybe Fudge Tunnel, a couple other bands. This is Infernal Coil, Within a World Forgotten. It's a Black Death mix, but very chaotic, very kind of muddy, hard to hear what's going on. I always kind of associate them as having a Portal influence. I don't know if that's fair, that every suffocating, murky death metal band is influenced by Portal, but I can't help but think of them as sounding like Portal a bit. Grave Miasma, awesome death metal band from England. This is on Dark Descent. I think it's their most recent album. Came out a couple years ago. Look forward to hearing more. Let's go to a big name. Nile, Annihilation of the Wicked. I've never been a huge Nile guy. Heard an album here and there, especially the first three. And when I look back in time, it seems like most Nile fans consider this their masterpiece. Again, I'm not intimately familiar with all of Nile's material, but I gotta go with Black Seeds of Vengeance, in my personal opinion. Cannibal Corpse, Vile. This was the first album with Corpse Grinder on vocals. I think it was at the time, but I'm not trying to say anything negative about any bands. I don't really like doing that. If I don't like it, I don't need to really talk about it. But I've never been a big Cannibal Corpse guy. I've always respected them, but just technical, always fast, too much gore on the lyrics. It's just not really for me. And the albums by the band, like, I've heard them all in one way or another. And it's always been the first three with Barnes that spoke the most to me. Even The Bleeding, the fourth one, a lot of people will say that's the best Barnes album. I don't know. I like the first three way better. This one's okay, and I have this memory of a friend borrowing this from me, and then I moved and he gave it to my dad to return, and I can only imagine what he thought when he you look at the back cover here. At least it's the edited front cover though. Okay, more recent band. This is Artificial Brain. They're putting out 3 albums on Profound Lore, and I think that's all of them. This is the second one, Infrared Horizon. And this is more of a technical, brutal death, which isn't my style. But these guys do it tastefully and effectively. They do a good job. So for that reason, I gave the next one a shot too. This one's called... This might be self-titled. I don't see a title on here. I got this one not too long ago. Need to get a little bit more familiar with this one. Classic album, Hooded Menace, Never Cross the Dead. I didn't know this, but I'm under the impression that people consider this their best album. I got this when it came out, and then I fell off of buying Hooded Menace releases, although I've always streamed them. And the newest one with that classic heavy metal influence, I love it. I need to get a copy of that. Ghastly. This is a Finnish death metal band. More of a Swedish and American sound, I'd say. This came out on $20 spin, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And I really liked the second song, especially Death by Meditation. That's a cool album cover. And finally, let's go back to another big name, Obituary, World Demise. My last video I mentioned that Fear, Emptiness, Despair, and Chaos AD were 2 of my first extreme metal albums, and this was the third, World Demise. I remember I saw the video for Don't Care, and some people say that's kind of a silly song, but when you're 12 years old, that's definitely a perfect entry into death metal. And plus, I kind of got the impression, like, oh, these guys, they care about the environment. Mom and Dad will approve of this stuff, too. But, the first 3 albums are better than this, but it was still cool. In my teenage years, I started to think that this was when Obituary were on a decline. But it seems consensus is that people do like this album when they look back on it. It was more of the album after this, Back from the Dead, that wasn't great. So I started spending more time with this, and it is another classic Obituary album. Oh, that's it. See ya for Volume 3. Thank you.